welcome to the People's Church of Divine Prophecy, Sunday, July 10th.
Praise your holy name, oh, praise your holy name, for you are our God. Sing hallelujah.
As usual, I sit in contemplation through the week and try to figure out what to talk about. And this morning over coffee, I had it come to me. I used to write everything out the week before, and I never referred to the notes. So since I started this service, I made a commitment to change the way that I work, to try to be moved more inspirationally, and try to have a little more trust in the Spirit that works with me. I was involved with a regular group called Weight Watchers for a while, and it worked real well for me. I got into it purely by accident because there wasn't enough people to be involved in it. I think I've lost 25 pounds to date in about 12 weeks. I was really surprised. So is everybody else in the group. But it's just one of those accidental things, accidental that we get involved in. And they have a saying in there that was very true. I mean, a lot of these self-help groups are very spiritual in their philosophies. And this is kind of verging on parapsychology and spiritual. And what they say is to create change in your life, you change the consistent actions, not the random actions. And a lot of times we see that in our lives where we have a knee-jerk reaction to something that's sudden in our lives, something that we want to cast out of our lives so we don't act like that anymore when we do it once in a while. And this seems to have a temporary success. And then I got to thinking about that. Change the consistent actions in your life. Try to be happy more often. Try to be less demanding more often. Work on the consistent things in your life. And that kind of flies in the face of just about everything I've ever heard. Because, we feel kind of comfortable with most of our life. It's the little random things we want to get rid of. But this is a different philosophy, and I've thought quite a bit about that. Also, in the last few weeks, I have had quite a bit of difficulty come into my life in a lot of different areas, and challenge the very core of my faith. And the last time that happened to me, I completely withdrew from everything for about 6 months. This time it took me about a weekend to sort it out with the help of some of my friends like Manny and a little bit of silent contemplation. So my talk today is going to be on forgiveness. And I'm going to start it off with a story that was told to me by my teacher, my spiritual guide from the UK, Eamon Downey. It's a story about an American Indian named Joseph who used to draw a lot. And he ended up leaving the reservation and joining the Merchant Marine. And this took place in World War II. And he would travel around to the different ports of call. And as anybody that knows history knows, we weren't involved in World War II for a long time after it started. So we were allowed in a lot of the ports of call as a neutral party and could see a lot of the troop movements and preparations for battles that we really weren't an opponent to at that time. And Joseph had this amazing talent to draw detail of everything he saw. He would draw soldiers' arm patches and insignias that were on the tanks that identified the troops and the garrisons that they were, whether they were light armor or Air Force or whatever they were, infantry, this patches on the shoulders and the different things on the sides of the equipment would tell what they were and where they were at. Another merchant mariner that was on the same ship with Joseph began to realize the significance of this, and he started gathering up these drawings as Joseph would discard them, sending them to military intelligence. Well, as any military secret usually is at some point, this was found out too. And in a neutral port of call, Joseph was taken into custody by the German officers and army. And they began to question him very strongly. They thought he was a spy. And they began to torture him in the most horrible ways, nailing his feet to the floor, beating him, starving him. And they finally decided that they would just let him die, and they would just torture him and starve him until he died. And finally, when they got done and realized there was no information to be gotten out of him, they tossed him in a cell and just left him there. He managed to survive, though, and he realized as they put him in a troop line and they were going to send him to a concentration camp so he would possibly be killed because he wasn't a prisoner of war. He was really a nobody. So they put him in this line, and he's moving down this line, and he suddenly is being shoved very hard by this German soldier with a rifle, just really, really hard, almost like beating him. And he just couldn't understand why this was happening to him after everything else that had happened to him. And he looks up and he sees the face of someone that he had gone to school with as a German exchange student. And this soldier pushed him into the POW camp line instead of the concentration camp. And he survived the war and got sent home. When he got home, the tribal people decided that he couldn't exist among them because he had lost his spirit. He had lost his spirit and his spiritual way by these experiences. And he was acting out, drinking, acting really insane. So the tribal elders gave him a choice to undergo a ceremony that involved being dunked repeatedly in ice-cold water to allow him to have visions about this time in his life that had harmed him so much so that he could go through it and regain his spirit, or he had to leave the reservation. He chose to have the session and begin to see visions. And as he was submerged time and time again, he was near death a couple of times from the exposure to the ice-cold water, and he began to hallucinate or have visions, however we want to say it. And he saw all of the people that had abused him through this course of this experience, and he began to forgive them one at a time without understanding anything of why this had happened to him. He just knew he had to, or he was going to die. But he got to this one point, this one soldier that he could not get by. And this soldier would come in his cell after the evening of torture and degradation and would cram chicken guts and the most horrible things in his mouth and force him to eat it. And he just could not understand why this was happening. So, as he was on the verge of death, the face of this soldier came to him, and he said, "They told me to let you die, and that's all I could find to feed you." So finally, Joseph came out of that, and he was holding him. The purpose to this story is several-fold. The first thing is about forgiveness. Forgiveness never comes after understanding. Forgiveness is a spiritual act that we do to free ourselves from things that bind us. Forgiveness is a spiritual gift, a spiritual virtue that allows us to move beyond that which is not known to us at this time. And that is how it works primarily. We must do it for the sake of doing it, not because we understand. And I can't tell you how many times in my life I have said, when I understand, I'll forgive you. As soon as I understand why this happened, but that rarely happens. Rarely happens. As a virtue of the Spirit, these are things that we do because we know we should do it, not because we understand why we should do it. It's an impetus, a pushing by Spirit to act without knowing. Within this story, I'll call it, there's several key people in it. Joseph, the German student who pushed him into the line of his salvation, and the soldier who fed him things that he thought was horrendous at the time. We all have had to play those roles at different times in our lives. We have all found ourselves, at least I have, in these different positions. The German student is like us when we find ourselves in tough situations and still find a way to make something good happen from it. However little, however simple, no matter how tough a situation we find ourselves in, there is that moment of opportunity where we are able to do something worthwhile and find our way and find comfort with the tough circumstances around us. The soldier who fed Joseph the chicken guts and the nasty stuff is like us when we are in a situation where we do things for somebody and they hate it. They don't understand it. They resent what we do for them. And we know that this is what we have to do and it's all that we can do. We can do no more for them. And many times these actions are misunderstood, misinterpreted, until a later time in that person's life when they can look back on it. We find ourselves many times as Joseph in circumstances where we have absolutely no control over it, where we are buffeted about by life circumstances. And we do lose our spirit at times. We do lose our spiritual way occasionally. And we do have to go through a lot of soul searching and ritual of sorts to recover that spiritual direction. Otherwise, we do remain insane, and I did that for many years. Lost my way and remained insane. So while this is a true story, it has a lot of things that speak to me through my life. Forgiveness is that which we do to find our center again. The key thing about forgiveness, as I said, is you do it because you know you should not, because you understand before you do it. The other key part of it that really stumbled me for a long time about doing it was the other person's acceptance of it. I thought they had to accept what I did before I had done it right. And do you know that very few people that you have wronged or feel that you have wronged them are willing to accept that when it comes time for you to do it? Sometimes it does. Sometimes there's that happy reunion and hugging and things, but much of the time that person is a little bit still resentful, not ready to, doesn't believe you, whatever the case is. It's one of them things where they're still doing this. That is not an indication of the worth of your attempt to free yourself from that situation.